I am Bella Sanders, 32 years old, a data analyst at a tech firm in Seattle earning $145,000 a year. Every dollar I have saved, every investment I have made, it all came from my own determination. That Thanksgiving morning, as I stood in the lobby of the Rosewood Resort in Miramar Beach, Florida, I felt something in my chest tighten. Not excitement, dread. This was our annual family reunion, a tradition that felt more like an obligation than a celebration. The resort stretched before me, all polished glass and marble, its coastal elegance masking the tension I knew was waiting inside. I had flown across the country for this, leaving behind the quiet comfort of my Seattle apartment, and already I regretted it. The lobby was cool, the air conditioning a sharp contrast to the humid warmth outside. My parents stood near a fountain, my father Robert adjusting his glasses, my mother Patricia clutching her purse. They glanced at me briefly, their smiles tight and rehearsed, the kind that never reached their eyes. "You made it," my mother said, her tone clipped, as if my arrival was an inconvenience rather than something they had planned for. I nodded, swallowing the familiar sting. They had always been this way with me, distant, reserved. Their warmth was saved for someone else. I scanned the lobby, looking for my brother Marcus, but he was nowhere in sight. Probably already settled into his suite, I thought, picturing him and his wife Vanessa unpacking their designer luggage while their daughter Lily explored the room. I approached the check-in counter, pulling up my reservation confirmation on my phone. The clerk, a young woman with a polished name tag, typed quickly, her brow furrowing as she scanned the screen. "I am sorry, ma'am," she said, her voice hesitant. "There is no reservation under your name." My stomach dropped, but I kept my face neutral. "Can you check again?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She did, her fingers moving faster now, but the result was the same. No room. No record. I stepped back, my mind racing. My parents had handled the bookings, using my grandmother Margaret's account like they always did. How could my name not be there? I turned to my parents, who were now whispering to each other, their eyes avoiding mine. "There must be a mistake," I said, my voice calm but firm. My father shrugged, his hands in his pockets. "We booked for the family," he muttered, his words vague but heavy. The truth hit me then, cold and sharp. This was no mistake. My brother's family had a suite. My parents had a room. But me? I had been left out, deliberately. I asked the clerk to check under my parents' names, and she confirmed their reservation, along with one for my brother's family. A sprawling suite with ocean views. My name was nowhere in the system. The clerk offered to find a room, but the resort was fully booked for Thanksgiving. "We can put you on a wait list," she said, her tone apologetic. I shook my head, a bitter taste rising in my throat. My parents stood silently, their lack of defense louder than any words. They knew. They had chosen. Before I could respond, the elevator doors opened, and Marcus emerged with his family. He wore a tailored blazer, his expression smug, the same look he had worn our entire lives when he knew he had won something. His wife Vanessa followed, her designer sunglasses perched on her head, her handbag swinging with every step. Lily, their 8-year-old daughter, clutched a stuffed animal, oblivious to the tension crackling in the air. Marcus walked over, his eyes flicking to the clerk before landing on me. "What is the holdup?" he asked, his tone dripping with impatience. The clerk hesitated, then gestured toward me. "There is no room booked for her," she said quietly. Marcus smirked, crossing his arms as he leaned against the counter. "That is right," he said, his voice loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. "The room is for me, my wife, and my daughter. We are the real family here." His words cut through me, each syllable a deliberate jab. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to say something, anything. But my father stared at his shoes, and my mother twisted a ring on her finger, refusing to meet my gaze. Their silence confirmed what I had always known. They had chosen him. Again. Heat rose in my chest, but I had spent years learning to control it. I looked Marcus in the eye, my voice steady and calm. "Enjoy it," I said. His smirk faltered for a split second, but he recovered quickly, shrugging as if my presence meant nothing. Vanessa gave a small, satisfied nod, adjusting her sunglasses. My parents remained frozen, their complicity written all over their faces. I turned on my heel, pulling my suitcase toward the exit. The weight of their betrayal pressed against me, but I refused to let it show. Outside, the humid air hit me as I flagged down a taxi. I slid into the back seat, my voice firm as I directed the driver to the airport. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Vague apologies mixed with excuses. I ignored it. As the taxi pulled away, I watched the resort fade in the rearview mirror. My hands were steady on my lap, but my mind was spinning. I had come here hoping, foolishly, that this year might be different, that they might see me, but they never would. Marcus was their golden child, the one they had propped up our entire lives while I fought for scraps of their attention. I thought back to our childhood, the endless comparisons. Marcus had been the star, the one who could do no wrong. His high school football games drew cheers from our parents, while my straight-A report cards earned barely a nod. When he rushed into a marriage with Vanessa, they called it romantic. When I focused on my career, they called it cold. Marcus ran a restaurant in Miami, a failing venture propped up by our grandmother Margaret's monthly checks. $25,000, wired without fail. Vanessa spent her days curating a perfect image on Instagram, posting about designer bags and private schools for Lily. I had scrolled through her posts before, not out of envy, but disbelief. How could someone live so recklessly, banking on someone else's wealth? My grandmother was different. Margaret Sanders, 78 years old, sharp as ever, had always been the one person who saw my worth. When I was 16, she sat me down with a ledger, teaching me how to budget, invest, and stand on my own. "Don't let anyone own you," she had said, her voice firm but warm. Those lessons had shaped me, pushed me to build a career where I answered to no one but myself. As the taxi hummed along the highway, I pulled out my phone and dialed her number. She answered on the second ring, her voice crisp and familiar. "Bella," she said, warmth cutting through the static. I took a deep breath, keeping my emotions in check, and told her everything. The check-in counter, the missing reservation, my parents' silence, and Marcus, his words echoing in my mind. "We are the real family here." Margaret listened without interrupting, her breathing steady on the other end. When I finished, there was a long pause. Then she spoke, her voice low but edged with steel. "They have gone too far this time," she said, each word deliberate. I could picture her sitting in her study, surrounded by books and ledgers, her sharp eyes narrowing. "I raised them better than this." Her tone carried a mix of disappointment and resolve, and I knew she was furious. I stayed quiet, letting her process. "I will handle this," she said finally, her voice calm but unyielding. "You focus on yourself, Bella. Do not let their nonsense pull you down." I nodded, though she could not see me. "Thank you," I said quietly. She did not make promises lightly, and her words carried a certainty that something was about to change. The call ended, and I leaned back in the taxi, staring out the window as the Florida landscape blurred past. My grandmother's reaction was not just about me, it was about principle. Marcus, Vanessa, my parents. They had crossed a line, and Margaret was not one to let such things slide. By the time my plane touched down in Seattle, the weight of the day had settled deep into my bones. The city's cool, damp air greeted me as I stepped outside the terminal, and I felt a flicker of relief. This was home, my apartment in Capitol Hill, my routines, the life I had built without their approval. The taxi ride through familiar streets steadied me, the glow of streetlights reflecting off wet pavement. Inside my apartment, I dropped my suitcase by the door and stood in the quiet. The space was mine. Every piece of furniture chosen deliberately, every book on the shelf a reflection of who I was. I poured myself a glass of water and sat at my kitchen counter, staring at my phone. 47 missed calls. Messages from my mother, texts from Marcus, even a voicemail from Vanessa. I ignored them all. Instead, I opened my laptop and began drafting an email to my grandmother, detailing everything in writing. I wanted her to have the facts, the timeline, the exact words Marcus had used. As I typed, my anger sharpened into clarity. This was not just about a missing reservation. It was about years of being erased, of watching them pour everything into Marcus while I stood in the shadows. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender was Margaret Sanders. The subject line read, "Family Matters." My pulse quickened as I opened it. She had copied me on a message addressed to my parents and Marcus. I scrolled down, reading her words, each sentence landing with the weight of a gavel. "I have been informed of the events that occurred at the Rosewood," Margaret wrote, her tone measured but unyielding. "Such behavior is not only unacceptable, but a betrayal of the values I have tried to instill in this family." Bella was deliberately excluded from a family gathering, treated as less than by her own brother and ignored by her parents. This ends now. She laid out her decision with surgical precision. Effective immediately, she was cutting all financial support to my father, my mother, and Marcus. No more trust fund distributions. No more monthly stipends. No safety nets. My eyes moved quickly, absorbing each consequence. For Marcus, the blow was specific and devastating. Margaret revealed that she had been quietly covering the debts of his restaurant, a Miami venture that had been hemorrhaging money for 2 years. The loans, the suppliers, the rent, all of it had been subsidized by her. "Your restaurant's financial obligations will no longer be my responsibility," she wrote. "You will face your creditors alone." I could picture Marcus reading those words, his confidence crumbling as reality set in. His restaurant was not a success. It was a facade held up by our grandmother's money, and now that support was gone. The business would collapse within weeks, maybe days. My parents faced their own reckoning. Margaret disclosed that their retirement fund, which they had relied on for years, was tied to her estate. She was severing their access, leaving them to manage on their own. Additionally, she withdrew her commitment to securing their place in Emerald Springs, a luxury assisted living facility they had already toured and bragged about to their friends. "You will need to make other arrangements," she wrote, her words cold and final. I sat back, letting the email sink in. There was no joy in reading it, but there was something else. Validation. For the first time, someone had acknowledged what had been done to me. Margaret had not just defended me. She had acted, swiftly and decisively, in a way my parents never would. The email ended with a single line directed at me, though it was buried in the message to them. "Bella has always stood on her own and she will continue to thrive. The rest of you would do well to learn from her example." I closed my laptop, a strange calm settling over me. Within hours, my phone exploded. Marcus called 6 times in a row, his messages frantic. "We need to talk. This is insane. You have to fix this." I deleted them without reading the rest. My mother's text came next, a flurry of half-baked apologies mixed with blame. "We did not mean for this to happen. If you had not told Margaret, none of this would be happening." My father sent an email, longer and more defensive. He called the situation a misunderstanding, claimed the booking issue was an oversight, and accused me of overreacting. But his words rang hollow, laced with the same excuses I had heard my entire life. They were not sorry for what they had done. They were sorry for the consequences. Vanessa chimed in with a voice message, her tone syrupy but strained. "Bella, we are all family here. Come on, let us work this out." Her words grated against the memory of her smug nod in the lobby, the way she had stood beside Marcus as he declared me irrelevant. I deleted the message before she could finish. Then came a text from Lily, my 8-year-old niece. "Aunt Bella, why did you leave? I miss you." My chest tightened, but I recognized the tactic immediately. Marcus and Vanessa had put her up to it, using her innocence to manipulate me. I did not respond, though ignoring her hurt more than I wanted to admit. I spent the evening reviewing work emails, catching up on projects I had left behind. My job demanded focus, and I welcomed the distraction. Numbers and data were predictable, unlike the family chaos swirling around me. A client deadline loomed, and I threw myself into it, the rhythm of analysis pulling me back to solid ground. By the next morning, the messages had shifted in tone. Marcus sent a new email, his confidence replaced by panic. "You talked to Grandma, did you not? This is going to destroy everything." I could almost see him pacing, realizing that his lifestyle, his restaurant, the illusion he had built, it was all crumbling. My mother's texts grew more desperate. "Please call us. We need to figure this out." But there was nothing to figure out. They had made their choices, and Margaret had made hers. I was done carrying the weight of their mistakes. That afternoon, I met Julia at a coffee shop near my apartment. She listened as I recounted the email, Margaret's decision, and the flood of messages that followed. Her response was immediate and firm. "They are panicking because they finally have to face reality. You did not cause this. They did." Her words grounded me, cutting through the guilt that kept trying to creep in. I sipped my coffee, the warmth spreading through me, and felt lighter than I had in days. Margaret's email had not just defended me. It had freed me from the expectation that I owed them anything. As I walked home, the Seattle skyline glowing in the fading light, I felt a quiet resolve settle in. My family's world was shifting, but mine held steady. I had my work, my apartment, my independence, and for the first time in my life, I did not need their approval to know I was enough. The week after Margaret's email should have felt like a victory, but instead, it brought something I had not anticipated: stress. The kind that crept into my sleep, tightened my shoulders, and made my hands shake when I reached for my coffee. I threw myself into work, hoping the familiar rhythm of spreadsheets and client reports would ground me, but my focus kept slipping. During a critical presentation to a major client, I stumbled over numbers I had memorized. My boss, Karen, noticed immediately, pulling me aside afterward. "Are you okay?" she asked, her tone more concerned than accusatory. I nodded, forcing a smile, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. This was not like me. I was the one who delivered flawlessly under pressure, who never let personal issues bleed into my professional life. That night, I barely slept. My phone continued to buzz with messages from my family, each notification a reminder of the chaos I had left behind. I silenced it, but the damage was done. My mind raced, replaying Marcus's words in the lobby, my parents' silence, Margaret's decisive email. I felt justified in my actions, but the weight of it all was crushing me. By the end of the second week, Karen called me into her office again. "Bella, I need you sharp," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. "Whatever is going on, you need to handle it. I have another client presentation next week, and I need to know you are ready." The unspoken threat hung in the air. If I could not deliver, someone else would. My $145,000 salary, the career I had built, it was all on the line. I left her office feeling hollowed out. For the first time since the Rosewood incident, I realized I was not invincible. The stress was not just emotional, it was physical, manifesting in headaches that pounded behind my eyes and an exhaustion that no amount of sleep could fix. I called Julia, and we met at her apartment. She took one look at me and shook her head. "You need to take care of yourself," she said. "Your family's mess is not worth losing what you have built." Her words were a wake-up call. I spent the weekend unplugged, my phone turned off, my laptop closed. I went for long walks along the waterfront, letting the cold air clear my head. I cooked simple meals, practiced breathing exercises, and slowly, the fog began to lift. By Monday, I felt steadier, ready to prove to Karen that I was still the analyst she had promoted. Meanwhile, my family's world was unraveling in real time. Marcus sent an email 6 weeks after Margaret's decision, and this time his tone was not angry. It was broken. "The restaurant is closing," he wrote. "The creditors are taking everything. We had to list the house. Vanessa and I are barely speaking. Lily does not understand why we are moving." I read his words without responding. Part of me felt a pang of sympathy for Lily, caught in the fallout of her parents' choices. But the rest of me knew that reaching out would only pull me back into their chaos. Marcus had declared me irrelevant in that lobby. Now he was facing the consequences of a life built on borrowed money and entitlement. My parents' situation was equally dire. My mother sent a message detailing their move to a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city. "We had to downsize," she wrote, her tone bitter. "The medical bills are piling up, and we cannot keep up. Your father's pride is shattered." She ended the message with a pointed line. "You could have stopped this." I stared at her words, feeling a surge of anger. I could have stopped this? I had not excluded myself from the reunion. I had not chosen Marcus over me for 32 years. I had not built a life on someone else's money only to watch it crumble. They had made their choices, and now they were living with them. Vanessa's messages were the most transparent. She did not bother with apologies or explanations. Instead, she went straight to blame. "This is your fault," she wrote. "You turned Margaret against us. Lily had to leave her school. Do you even care?" I deleted the message, her accusations sliding off me like water. Vanessa had spent years flaunting a lifestyle funded by my grandmother, posting it all over Instagram for the world to see. Now that the money was gone, she was scrambling, and I was her scapegoat. The 47 missed calls had come in waves over those 6 weeks, mostly from Marcus and my mother. I had ignored them all, letting each one go to voicemail. Finally, curiosity got the better of me, and I listened to one. It was my mother, her voice strained and desperate. "Bella, please. We need to talk. This has gone too far. Your father is not sleeping. Marcus is losing everything. Just call us back. Please." I deleted the voicemail, feeling nothing. They were not calling to apologize. They were calling because they needed something, and I was done being their solution. Julia came over that evening, bringing takeout and her usual no-nonsense perspective. She scrolled through the messages I had saved, shaking her head. They are not sorry for what they did to you, she said. They are sorry they lost their meal ticket. Her words were harsh, but they were true. My family had spent years taking me for granted, and now that Margaret had cut them off, they wanted me to fix it. But I was not their savior. I was the daughter they had dismissed, the sister they had excluded, and I owed them nothing. As I sat across from Julia, eating pad thai and talking about everything except my family, I felt the tension in my shoulders ease. I had almost lost my job because of their drama, but I had pulled myself back. My next client presentation went flawlessly, earning praise from Karen and securing a contract that boosted my standing at the firm. My life was moving forward and theirs was standing still. 8 weeks after Margaret's email, I was working late at my desk when a new message appeared in my inbox. The subject line made me pause. I am sorry. The sender was Marcus. I hesitated, my cursor hovering over the delete button, but something made me click it open. His email was long, carefully worded, a stark contrast to his usual arrogance. Bella, I need you to know that I am sorry for what happened at the Rosewood. I was wrong to say what I said. You are family and I treated you like you were not. The restaurant is gone. We are selling the house. Vanessa and I are barely holding it together. Lily keeps asking why everything is changing, and I do not know what to tell her. I read the words twice, searching for sincerity. There was pain in his message, that much was clear. But as I continued reading, the apology shifted. He mentioned the pressure he had been under, the stress of keeping the restaurant afloat, the expectations our parents had placed on him. It felt less like an apology and more like an explanation, a justification for his cruelty. I closed the email without responding. My mother's message came next, a text that pinged my phone as I was making dinner. We are so sorry, Bella. We never meant for things to turn out this way. Please, can we talk? Just give us a chance to explain. I set my phone down, stirring the pasta on the stove, and let her words sit unanswered. There was nothing to explain. They had shown me exactly who they were. My father's email arrived the following morning, longer and more defensive than Marcus's. He called the Rosewood incident a misunderstanding, claimed they had assumed I would figure out alternative arrangements, and insisted they had not meant to hurt me. But then, buried in the third paragraph, came the real message. If you had not involved Margaret, we could have worked this out as a family. Now everything is falling apart. I read that line 3 times, feeling anger rise in my chest. He was blaming me, not for being excluded, but for telling the truth, for refusing to stay silent while they erased me. I closed the email and archived it, my decision made. They were not sorry for what they had done. They were sorry for what it had cost them. That evening, I called Margaret. She answered with her usual briskness, and I asked if my family had reached out to her. They have, she said, her tone dry. Marcus sent me a lengthy email about his restaurant and his daughter. Your mother called twice, crying about medical bills. Your father wrote asking me to reconsider, claiming I was being too harsh. And what did you say? I asked, already knowing the answer. I told them my decision stands, Margaret replied, her voice firm. They built their lives on entitlement and favoritism. They excluded you, Bella, not just from a room, but from their respect. I will not reward that behavior. Her words settled over me like a blanket, warm and reassuring. I thanked her and hung up, feeling lighter. The next step was harder. I opened my phone's settings and began blocking numbers. Marcus's number disappeared first, then Vanessa's. My mother's followed, then my father's. Each tap of the screen felt like shedding weight, cutting away the ties that had bound me to their chaos. I paused when I reached the last contact, a number I had saved under Lily. My niece had sent me 2 more texts over the past weeks, both short and confused. Aunt Bella, are you mad at me? I miss you. I stared at her messages, my chest tight. Lily was innocent in all of this, a child caught in her parents' mess, but responding to her would mean opening a door I had worked hard to close. Marcus and Vanessa would use her to pull me back, to manipulate me into fixing what they had broken. I saved her number without blocking it, a small concession to the future. Someday, when she was older, I might reach out, but not now. With my family's numbers blocked, my phone finally fell silent. The constant buzzing, the frantic messages, the guilt-laden voicemails, they all stopped. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. I spent the evening organizing my apartment, a ritual that always grounded me. I dusted shelves, rearranged books, and watered the plants on my balcony. Each small task was a reminder that this space was mine, untouched by their drama. 2 days later, I received an email from Karen. She wanted to see me in her office, and my stomach tightened. I had recovered from my earlier stumble, delivering strong work over the past few weeks, but the memory of her warning still lingered. I walked into her office, expecting another talk about focus and performance. Instead, she smiled. Bella, I wanted to let you know that the client from last week was impressed. They have requested you specifically for their next project, and the executive team has taken notice. She paused, her smile widening. We are promoting you to senior analyst, effective immediately. It comes with a corner office, a raise, and more autonomy. You have earned this. I sat there, stunned, as her words sank in. A promotion, a raise, recognition for the work I had poured into this job, the late nights, and meticulous attention to detail. I thanked her, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside me. Walking back to my desk, I felt a surge of pride. My family had tried to pull me down, but I had held firm. My career, my independence, they were intact. That evening I met Julia at our favorite wine bar to celebrate. She raised her glass, her grin wide. To you, for refusing to let them win. I clinked my glass against hers, feeling a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the wine. My family had made their choices, and I had made mine. They were struggling, scrambling to rebuild what they had lost. But I was thriving, moving forward on a path I had built myself. As I walked home later that night, the Seattle skyline glowing against the dark sky, I felt a quiet certainty settle over me. I had closed the door on them, not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. And for the first time in my life, I did not feel guilty about it. 10 weeks after I had walked out of the Rosewood, my life had found a rhythm I had not known was possible. My new corner office overlooked the Seattle skyline, the Space Needle visible in the distance on clear days. The promotion had brought not just a raise but a sense of validation that no family gathering could ever provide. My work was sharp, my focus restored, and the stress that had nearly derailed me was a fading memory. I spent my mornings reviewing portfolios and running analysis for clients, my afternoons in meetings where my opinions carried weight. The team respected me, and I had earned it through years of discipline and late nights. My evenings were my own, filled with routines I had carefully built. Yoga classes, dinners with Julia, quiet hours reading on my couch. It was a life I had chosen, free from the expectations and disappointments that had defined my first 32 years. On a Friday evening, I returned home to find a package waiting at my door. The handwriting was unmistakable, elegant, and precise. Margaret. I carried it inside, setting it on my kitchen counter as I poured myself a glass of water. The box was small, wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. I opened it carefully, revealing a hardcover book on wealth management and legacy planning. Tucked inside the front cover was a note in her handwriting. Bella, you have always understood what it means to build something real. This is for you, to keep growing the future you have created. I am proud of you. Margaret. I ran my fingers over the words, a lump forming in my throat. My grandmother had not just defended me. She had seen me, truly seen me, in a way my parents never had. I placed the book on my desk next to my laptop, a reminder that her faith in me was not misplaced. That evening, I attended my monthly investment club meeting. The group had become a cornerstone of my social life, a space where I could discuss strategies and learn from others who valued financial independence. Rachel, a software engineer I had grown close to, asked about the family situation. I had mentioned it briefly at a previous meeting, and she had followed up with quiet support ever since. I gave her the update, keeping my tone matter of fact. My grandmother cut them off financially. My brother lost his restaurant. My parents downsized. They reached out to apologize, but it was not real. It was desperation. I blocked their numbers. Rachel nodded, her expression thoughtful. That takes guts. Most people cave when family comes begging. I shrugged, sipping my wine. I spent too long trying to earn their approval. I am done with that. The group's conversation shifted to investment strategies, and I shared a recent move I had made into renewable energy stocks. The returns were promising, and several members took notes. As the meeting wrapped up, Julia pulled me aside. You look different, she said, studying my face. Lighter. I smiled, realizing she was right. The weight I had carried for so long, the need to prove myself to people who would never see me, it was gone. Walking home that night, the city alive with Friday evening energy, I felt a clarity I had not experienced before. My family's collapse had been painful to witness, but it had also freed me. I no longer measured my worth against Marcus's achievements or my parents' expectations. I was enough, just as I was. A week later, something unexpected arrived. A letter, handwritten on pale blue stationery, forwarded to my office by someone who still had my work address. The return address was unfamiliar, but the handwriting was careful, almost childlike. I opened it at my desk during lunch, unfolding the single page. Dear Aunt Bella, I miss you. Mom and Dad say you are busy, but I think you are mad. I do not understand why we had to move or why I had to leave my school. Everything is different now. I saved my allowance and bought this paper to write to you. I hope you write back. I love you, Lily. I stared at the letter, my chest tightening. My 8-year-old niece had used her allowance to reach out, navigating a situation she could not possibly understand. I pictured her at a new school, confused and hurting, caught in the fallout of her parents' choices. For a moment I considered responding, imagining a short note to let her know I was not angry with her. But then I thought of Marcus and Vanessa, how they had used Lily before to manipulate me. If I responded, they would see it as an opening, a crack they could widen. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer, next to the velvet pouch that held the necklace I had bought for her months ago. Someday, when she was older and could understand, I would reach out. But not now. That evening Margaret called. Her voice was warm, but there was something else in it, purpose. Bella, I wanted you to know that I have finalized the changes to my estate, she said. You are now the primary beneficiary. Everything I have built will go to you. I sat down, the words sinking in. Margaret, I started, but she cut me off. You have always been the one who understood what it means to stand on your own. Your brother, your parents, they leaned on me because it was easy. You never did. That is why you are ready for this. I thanked her, my voice thick with emotion. She had not just given me financial security, she had given me validation, a recognition that my choices, my independence, they had been the right path all along. We talked for a few more minutes, her tone lighter as she asked about my work and my investments. When we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, feeling the weight of her decision settle over me. The following Saturday, I hosted a small dinner at my apartment. Julia, Rachel, and a few others from my investment club gathered around my table, laughter filling the space as we shared a meal I had cooked. These people, who had no obligation to be here, who chose to show up because they valued my company, they were my family now. As the evening wound down and my guests left, I stood on my balcony, the city lights stretching out before me. 10 weeks ago, I had been standing in a resort lobby, dismissed and erased by the people who were supposed to love me. Now, I was here, in a life I had built with my own hands, surrounded by people who saw me for who I was. I thought about Marcus, struggling to rebuild a life without the safety net he had always relied on. I thought about my parents, navigating a retirement they had not planned for. I thought about Lily, growing up in the shadow of her parents' mistakes. I felt a pang of sorrow for them, but it was distant, like watching a storm from behind glass. Margaret had taught me that financial independence was more than money in an account. It was the power to live on your own terms, to choose who you let into your life and who you leave behind. My family had made their choices. They had chosen Marcus, chosen comfort, chosen to ignore my worth. And I had chosen myself. As I closed the balcony door and turned off the lights, I felt a peace I had never known. The door to my past was closed, not with anger, but with clarity. I had walked away from their chaos and built something they could never touch. And that, I realized, was the truest form of freedom. That's Bella's story. A 2-year-old woman who refused to beg for a place at a table that never wanted her there, who walked away from a family that erased her and built a life they could never touch, who proved that blood does not define family, character does. Where are you watching this from? What city? What country? Drop it in the comments below. I love seeing our community come together over stories like this. Hit that like button if this story resonated with you. Share it if you know someone who has ever been the scapegoat in their family, the one who was always overlooked while the golden child got everything. And subscribe for more true stories about standing up for yourself, cutting toxic people out, and building a life on your own terms. And here's the most important question. Do you think Bella should reach out to her niece Lily when she gets older? Or should she keep that door closed permanently to protect her peace? Drop a comment with your honest thoughts. Because family ties are complicated, and sometimes love means letting go. Thanks for watching. Remember, Being excluded does not mean you are not worthy. It means you are finally free to find people who actually deserve you. See you in the next one.